It was late, past midnight, and the road ahead stretched long and empty, with only the faint glow of distant streetlights to guide us. My wife, Lauren, and I were on our way back from a weekend at her parents' house. We decided to take the scenic route home, hoping the quiet rural roads would be a nice change from the bustling highways. It started out peaceful, but as the night wore on, the stillness became unnerving, the kind of silence where even the hum of the engine feels too loud. As we approached a red light in the middle of what seemed like nowhere, we both noticed him at the same time. A man stood on the corner, under the dim flicker of a street lamp. He wasn't wearing much for the cold, just a dirty jacket and jeans, and he was staring directly at our car. Lauren shifted uneasily in her seat. "Do you think he's okay?" "I don't know," I said, trying to sound calm, though the hair on the back of my neck prickled. The man started moving, slowly at first, then with purpose, heading straight for us. "Just stay calm," I whispered. I made sure the doors were locked. The hitchhiker reached the driver's side window and peered in. His face was gaunt, his eyes wide and unblinking. He knocked on the glass, a sharp, deliberate rap that made both of us jump. "Roll it down," he said, his voice muffled but commanding. "I just need to talk to you." Lauren grabbed my arm. "Don't," I nodded. "Sorry, we can't help you," I called out, my voice firm but as polite as I could manage. The man didn't move. He just stared at me, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then he knocked again, harder this time. "Come on," he said, his tone more insistent. "Just roll it down. I won't hurt you. I just need a ride. It's freezing out here." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. The light was still red. It felt like it had been red forever. Lauren whispered, "Why isn't it changing?" The man leaned closer, his face inches from the glass now. His smile widened unnaturally, revealing teeth that were crooked and yellow. "I can see you're good people," he said, his voice lower now, almost a growl. "Don't leave me out here. That wouldn't be right." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. "We're not opening the window," I said firmly, my voice louder now. For a moment he didn't move. Then he started laughing, a deep guttural sound that didn't match his thin frame. The light turned green. Without hesitation, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, and I heard the man shout something, though I couldn't make out the words over the roar of the engine. We drove in silence for a few minutes, both of us too shaken to speak. But as the adrenaline started to wear off, Lauren looked out the side mirror and gasped. "What?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "He's running after us," she said, her voice trembling. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sure enough, there he was, sprinting down the road at an unnatural speed, his figure illuminated by our taillights. "That's impossible," I muttered, pressing harder on the gas. The road curved sharply, and when we came out of the bend, he was gone, just like that. Lauren and I exchanged a look, both of us too afraid to say anything. But the silence didn't last. A loud thud came from the roof of the car, followed by a series of scraping sounds, as if something or someone was clawing at the metal. "Drive faster," Lauren screamed. I floored it, the car shaking as we hit speeds I normally wouldn't dare attempt on such dark, narrow roads. The scraping stopped, replaced by a loud bang on the trunk. Then nothing. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of a well-lit gas station miles away. When we got out to inspect the car, we found deep scratches running the length of the roof and trunk, as if giant claws had raked across the metal. Lauren stared at them, her face pale. What was he?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we'd come far too close to finding out. And as we stood there under the harsh fluorescent lights, I couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened if we'd rolled down that window. The wind was biting that evening, cutting through my jacket like it wasn't even there. The rain had just started, fat droplets slapping against the asphalt and soaking my sneakers. I stood on the side of the highway, my thumb out, hoping for a ride before the weather got worse. I don't take just any ride. I'm not stupid. Women, couples, those are usually safe bets. Men alone, that's a hard no unless they give off a trustworthy vibe. But tonight, the cold and rain made me desperate. That's when he pulled up. A black sedan with a sputtering engine slowed to a stop just a few feet ahead of me. The driver rolled down the passenger side window, and I could see him clearly. He was around 30, clean-shaven, with short hair and a polite smile. "Need a lift?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. I hesitated, glancing at the empty road behind him. Normally, I would have let him drive off, but my fingers were numb, and my teeth were starting to chatter. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Thanks." I climbed into the passenger seat, throwing my damp backpack at my feet. The car smelled faintly of old coffee and pine air freshener. "Where are you headed?" he asked, pulling back onto the road. "There's a gas station about 5 miles up," I said. "You can drop me there." He nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. At first, the ride was uneventful. We made small talk, where I was coming from, where he was headed. He said he was traveling home from a business trip, and I nodded along, not really paying attention. But then things started to get strange. "So, you hitchhike often?" he asked suddenly, his voice different, higher-pitched, almost sing-song. "Sometimes," I said, frowning. "Brave girl," he said in that same strange tone. "Not many would take a ride from someone like me." I forced a laugh. "Why's that?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice had changed again, lower, gravelly. "Oh, people think I'm odd. They don't like the way I talk." I glanced at him, my heart starting to race. He wasn't looking at me anymore, just staring straight ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. You okay?" I asked. He smiled, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too forced. "Fine, dear, just fine." Dear, the word sent a shiver down my spine. He sounded like an old woman now, his voice shaky and frail. I pressed myself against the door, gripping the edge of my seat. "Are you messing with me or something?" He laughed, a shrill, cackling sound that didn't match his face at all. The rain was coming down harder now, the windshield wipers squeaking furiously against the glass. I glanced out the window, trying to gauge how far we were from the gas station. "So many personalities in one car," he said softly, his voice shifting again. "It's a lot, isn't it?" I didn't answer. My hand inched toward the door handle. He must have noticed, because he suddenly slammed his hand against the dashboard, making me jump. "Don't do that," he snapped, his voice deep and commanding now. "You don't want to upset me." I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. The lights of the gas station came into view just then, glowing faintly through the rain. Relief flooded me, but I kept my face blank. "We're almost there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond. His expression was blank, his eyes fixed on the road. When he finally pulled into the gas station, I didn't wait for the car to stop completely. As soon as it slowed, I yanked the door open and jumped out, grabbing my backpack as I stumbled onto the wet pavement. "Thanks for the ride," I called over my shoulder, not daring to look back. I made it into the gas station and stood by the window, watching as his car idled in the parking lot. He didn't get out. He just sat there, staring at me through the rain-speckled glass. After a few minutes, he finally drove off, his taillights disappearing into the night. I don't know who or what I rode with that night, but I've never been so glad to get out of a car in my life. And I'll never, ever let desperation cloud my judgment again. The roads were desolate, blanketed in the eerie glow of moonlight, with only the hum of my tires breaking the silence. It was late, way later than I'd planned to be out, but the promise of a warm holiday at home kept me focused. I had a long stretch of highway ahead and hadn't seen another car for miles. That's when I saw her. She stood on the shoulder, illuminated by my headlights, a middle-aged woman wrapped in an oversized coat, her gray hair sticking out from under a knit hat. She was waving one arm, holding a tattered bag with the other. I hesitated. Picking up a hitchhiker at this hour wasn't exactly on my holiday to-do list, but the roads were freezing and she looked harmless enough. The holidays were about kindness, after all. I pulled over, the gravel crunching under my tires. She hurried to the passenger side, opened the door, and climbed in without hesitation. Thank you," she said, her words slightly slurred. The faint smell of alcohol wafted in with her. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just up the road," she said, gesturing vaguely. "Anywhere with a restroom and some coffee." I nodded and pulled back onto the road. At first, the conversation was light. She told me her name was Helen, and we talked about our families and holiday plans. She mentioned having kids she hadn't seen in years, and how she hoped to reconnect with them this Christmas. But then the tone shifted. "Do you ever hear voices?" she asked suddenly, her voice quieter now. I blinked, caught off guard. No, can't say that I do. Must be nice, she said, staring out the window. Mine are with me all the time. I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. Like, voices in your head? She turned to me, her eyes glassy but intense. Sometimes they're outside, whispering things, telling me what to do. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my stomach sinking. What kind of things? I asked cautiously. Her lips curled into a strange smile. Oh, things like where to go, who to trust, who not to. I nodded slowly, not sure how to respond. And sometimes, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, they tell me things I shouldn't do, things I can't do. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. She started chuckling softly, then abruptly stopped. But I don't always listen to them. Not always. Do you think that's bad? No, I said quickly, not bad at all. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She was staring straight ahead now, her hands clenched tightly around her bag. Finally, we approached a rest area. The building was dimly lit with just a couple of vending machines glowing in the dark. Here we are, I said, my voice strained. She didn't say anything, just opened the door and stepped out. I turned off the engine and followed her inside, my nerves on edge. The restrooms were at the far end of the building, and as soon as she disappeared into the women's room, I made my move. I sprinted back to the car, my heart pounding. Fumbling with the keys, I started the engine and sped off without looking back. As the rest area faded into the distance, I glanced in my rearview mirror. My breath caught in my throat. Helen was standing in the middle of the road, her face illuminated by my taillights. She was staring directly at me, her expression eerily calm. And then she smiled. It wasn't a kind smile or a thankful one. It was a smile that said she knew something I didn't. A smile that chilled me to my core. I pressed the gas pedal harder, my hands trembling on the wheel. Even now, hours later, I can't get that smile out of my head.